right. First rule of this channel, we do not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. So welcome to week 10, How the Sausage is Made show. Dak Prescott looks like he's going to be the MVP of the week, depending on what Russ and Josh Allen do tomorrow. But, Dak, 400 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, and then got another one on the ground. That's why those rushing quarterbacks are so important. So just when it looked like Josh Dobbs was going to be the overall value MVP for the quarterback position, Dak starts getting it done. And now Dak is going to be in the running for being that guy that wins leagues at his cost. So Dak got it done. Justin Herbert, I mean, sometimes just do the smart thing. Don't be cute. It looks like a shootout. It's going to be a shootout. It quacks like a duck. It looks like a duck. It's probably going to be a shootout. Justin Herbert gets it done against the Lions. So don't listen to the guy on the internet. Just go, hey, if someone's going to get the full workload, and we're talking about Devin Singletary here, if he's going to get 70% of the snaps and the 70% of the work, just roll him out there. Don't listen to the guy on the internet that says like he's inefficient and not a good play. So finishing off Josh Dobbs, no one knew that he was going to come out of anywhere and win leagues, and he's going to be looks like a very good to high end starter for the rest of the year if he could keep this up. Sam Howell, he's going to be another guy that wins leagues. Sam Howell did 300, 3 touchdowns, and a little nimbly bimbly, so he's at 24 points in this with these league settings. But anyway, Josh Dobbs, 268 touchdown, and then he got another one on the ground with 44 yards. And then Geno Smith, again, sometimes those matchups just say, hey, play me, and he did 369, 2 touchdowns, 13 yards on the ground against that Redskins team. And Burrow, Purdy, Goff, Stroud got it done late. He looked like he was gonna not be able to get it done. Really turned it on later in the game. Running back perspective, B-Rob, and again, I don't know how much these are going to be predictive, but like I said, I would just throw him in my lineup, leave him there, understand he's going to be my boom bust RB2, 8 for 38, and another 6 for 6, 119, and a touchdown on the ground. And then Jahmyr Gibbs at running back 2 this week to go with David Montgomery at running back 7. I just don't know if there's going to be enough touchdowns to go around. 2 of Jahmyr Gibbs' touchdowns came on 1-yard plunges that I would have thought would have gone to David Montgomery, but they didn't. Some of the other ones, it's Devin Singletary, 30 carries, 150 yards, 1 touchdown. Another 1 reception for 11 yards. Trying to see. Najee is creeping back into the discussion for a weekly role. Well, he is a weekly role at this point, but I don't know how sustainable this is going to be going forward. Wide receiver wise, again, the wide receiver, where is he at? Wide receiver 7 this week, Noah Brown. So again, those targets have to go someplace. And with Nico out and Robert Woods out, I'm pretty sure Robert Woods is out. But anyway, Noah Brown goes 7 for 8 for 172. So again, just don't overthink it. That's what it says to do. Roll those guys out and play them. And then a rare Brandon Cook sighting. And I don't know what went on with this. 9 for 10 for 173 and touchdown. And I would not be chasing that because I don't know how predictive at all the Cowboys offense is going to be moving forward. And then TJ Hawkinson, no surprise that he's the tight end 1. George Kittle, high efficiency week, gets it done. Trey McBride, that's why we were spending on him a couple weeks ago. Jake Ferguson going to be hovering there. Tyler Conklin, not too surprising, but I mean, attached pieces to better offenses are probably better than him. There's Michael Mayer getting his first touchdown. Dalton Schultz, the number 2 on a good offense going forward. Kickers, was it Jason Myers for the Seahawks doing 21 points, 5 for 5 field goals. So again, that surprises me a little bit. The Prater getting up there doesn't surprise me. 4 for 4, the kickers for the Cardinals. Zerline, this doesn't surprise me at all. Like, not a good offense going against the Raiders. 4 for 4. Carlson 3 for 3. And Hopkins, the kicker for the Browns, doesn't surprise me. Boswell. So trying to predict those like not good offenses does appear to kind of be the strategy for kickers. And then defense, the 49ers, again, don't listen to the guy on the internet. They're the defense 1 going and just laying a big smack it down on the Jaguars. The Colts are the number 2. Again, that's kind of predictive. I was expecting that. The Browns, mean, they're just a weekly roll, and they're right there with the Ravens in that game. The Buccaneers, that was predictive also. The Jets, Raiders, both those were predictive. The Vikings, yeah. So like some of the better defenses aren't always going to be the right role. We're trying to guess like the right outcome. So looking on to or moving on to the box scores, Colts Patriots in Frankfurt. There's not a lot to say about this game, other than I did see that Mac Jones got into a screaming match with Bill Belichick. Who knows how that's going to shake out? Bailey Zappi came in late in the game through a game-sealing pick. Gardner Minshew again. This is the variable game of it being played over there in Europe, so I would not expect very much of my toys. Jonathan Taylor got it done with a rushing touchdown late. Pittman with the volume. Josh Downs did play. There wasn't a lot of offense in this game. Ramondre, I mean, he's back on the table as like a mid to high end RB2, 20 carries, 88 yards, another 3 for 14 on the ground. And again, I just don't know how good and predictive this offense is going to be with Zeke getting another 13 carries and 2 for 34 receiving. And then Demario Douglas did 6 for 84 on 9 targets. So, I mean, yeah, like low end wide receiver 2, high end 3. I mean, don't listen to the guy on the internet. And Hunter Henry wasn't a thing. Trying to guess that. And again, I like the biggest issue that I'm going to have with these teams, like the Patriots going forward, is even if they have good pieces like Ramondre and Demario Douglas, they have such a cap ceiling on a week-to-week basis, and again, because they're going to be bad, they're also going to give you weeks where like you basically don't roll anybody out in a slot. And we'll talk about some of the other players that massively disappointed, but like that's the problem with trying to play guys on bad offenses, that there aren't enough touchdowns to win you weeks. And even when they give you like that 40-degree day to slightly over a 40-degree day, like that's their ceiling. And they also have the fact that like they have almost a bottomless floor to lose you a week. So like it's really tough to roll some of those guys out. So like guys like the Texans and the Bengals that project to be like good offenses, we want pieces of those good offenses because there tends to be more touchdowns and more yards to go around with good offenses. So CJ Stroud got it done a little bit late. Like this was really not looking good for him. He did throw a pick and have, I think, 2 fumbles. So those weren't good, but got one done through the air, one done on the ground. Then there's Devin Singletary. I don't know if and when Dameon Pierce is going to be back, but I mean, I imagine at the very least this is going to be a timeshare. If not, Devin Singletary is going to be have a lot of value. There's Noah Brown. There, Robert Woods did play, so I mean, Noah Brown did function as the de facto number 1 in this offense with 8 targets, or excuse me, no, the number 2, 14 targets for Tank Dell. Got there with a touchdown, 6 for 56, but then Noah Brown as the number 2, that efficiency number 2, 8 for 7, 172. Yeah, like, and depending on when Nico comes back, he's still probably going to be in that like boom bust wide receiver 3 range. It's just going to be very difficult to predict some of these guys. So if you're rolling them out there, you're knowing that they could just completely, absolutely bust, or they could give you that like ability to win a week. And we'll probably talk more about those guys on the after waiver show, or on the after waiver show. Like if Noah Brown's available in your league, I mean, definitely I would be putting a little bit of capital to go after and get him. But again, he's going to go into that Calvin Ridley type range where like, yeah, he can have this great spike week. But again, you should realize that he could do like 2 for 3 for 30 yards in the same week, the same range of outcomes. Let's see. So Bengals, Joe Burrow, 2 picks, didn't lose a fumble. I mean, like these are just the CJ Stroud and Joe Burrow are in those sub-elite range of high volume passing offenses that they have to get it done with touchdown passes in high amounts of yardage because they're just not going to have the nimbly bimbly to get it done. Joe Mixon, like high end RB2, 11 for 46, a touchdown. Just having the volume on a good offense is always a good thing. And he did another 2 for -1 on 3 targets. And that's the funny thing. Like, there's Trenton Irwin doing 2 for 54 on 4 targets and a touchdown. And again, just like it's somewhat predictive. Those targets have to go someplace. And then he did it before in the absence of T. Higgins, and kind of just going like, yeah, he'll get me there somehow. Wow, Tyler Boyd 8 for 117. I was watching Tyler Boyd. This game got out of hand in the second half because in the first half, and I had CJ Stroud in one of my leagues. It just was not a very, there wasn't a lot of fantasy going on in it. And then I came back later on to check the ticker and was like, oh wow, like guys are getting points done. So 8 for 117 on 12 targets. And I think mostly those were in the second half when I was looking at that. Jamar Chase 1 for 6 for 5 for 124 and touchdown. That's what you paid for. And then this is what I was kind of tracking with the tight ends. Tanner Hudson, and I don't know anything about him, 6 for 33 on 7 targets. Like if there's a tight end that can kind of creep into a weekly discussion that comes out of this Bengals and the volume, that might be a guy to be paying attention to in deeper leagues. That's why I've been kind of paying attention to him. And then Iovas got that 1 target, so he's in there. That's more from a dynasty perspective. Already talked about the Bills and the Bears the other day. Saints and Vikings. So I was paying his just because of the Josh Dobbs shares. So Derek Carr went down with a shoulder, and then Jameis Winston had to come in. Alvin Kamara, 9 for 42. There was a lot of throwing in this game. Six for or Chris Olave 9 for 6 for 94 and a touchdown. Kamara 7 targets, 7 for 33. Shaheed, like those are not the higher productive shots, the lower probability shots that we like out of him. This was really quiet day for Taysom Hill overall. And what happened in this game, I know I didn't talk about this with the Bengals. I guess I'll go back. But what happened in this game that I saw is Josh Dobbs basically put the Vikings on his back, threw a touchdown pass, and ran another one in. They were up 24-3 at halftime. And then there was very little offense from the Vikings in the second half. And the Saints kind of just clawed their way back in the game, and then they ran out of gas. That's kind of was what happened in this game. TJ Hawkinson, 15 targets, 11 for 134 and a touchdown. I was listening to a podcast where they said that Josh Dobbs is one of the guys that like targets tight ends at like the highest rate in the league. So that would benefit TJ Hawkinson going forward. Jordan Addison operating as the number 2, 7 for 4 for 69. And then the other thing that we'll kind of talk about this, Ty Chandler got in 15 carries for 45 and a touchdown. This is something that I was monitoring early in the season, and then they traded for Cam Akers, and then Ty Chandler comes in, and he's going to be a little bit more efficient. He has better athletics than Tyler Madison. Did score on a direct snap later on in the game. I don't see him being used in the passing game yet, but he's going to be up there on the waiver wire. Maybe some people out there have already cuffed him, or they picked him up predictively ahead of time. That should have been going on. I was talking about that a little bit, but he's going to be a priority. I imagine because of the offense that he could work his way into that like 40-60 split range. Hard to predict which way he's going to fall into that category. But yeah, there's something going on in Minnesota that they didn't trust him, and they went out and they traded for Cam Akers. And now whatever's going on, they're finally starting to give him a little bit of play over Madison. So that's a little bit interesting to look at going forward. And then, like I said, Josh Dobbs is probably going to be like a pretty close to a league winner at quarterback, because he would have gone undrafted in almost every single league. And with that rushing floor, he's going to be able to go out and compete with the guys that the higher level capital was paid on. So with those guys that didn't pay on quarterback, the elite quarterbacks early, if they can get a Dobbs that is going to be more volatile, obviously, than like a Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts, that means that there's like a second, third, fourth round pick that could have gone to another position that may not have been a league winner, but they end up being an positional upgrade compared to the team that spent on an elite quarterback. And that means that guy gets to turn around and potentially they have to find one of those other quote unquote league winners later in the draft or on free agency to go compete with that team that gets that advantage from rolling out of Josh Dobbs in that league. Let's see. So I didn't talk about this, but the Bengals and the Texans, like I said, it was ugly in the first half, and then it turned into a shootout in the second half, 40 combined points. And then the Bengals ended up taking or tying the score up late. And then last play of the game, CJ Stroud gets them in position, they kick a game-winning field goal. So, and I wasn't really paying attention to any of the games today. So just kind of gathering what was going on. So Packers Steelers, this one was like a little weird. A little more scoring in the first half than I thought it was going to go on, and then very little scoring in the second half. Jordan Love again may not be good at football, but we don't care. Aaron Jones not efficient. AJ Dillon was efficient. Jaden Reed, and we've kind of talked about this. These wide receiver 3 types, like they're gonna have some predictive or unpredictable spike weeks, and it just becomes an issue of if I'm building my roster throwing these wide receiver 3s, and these wide receiver 3s do grow on trees, it just turns into an issue of like I have to be patient enough to leave them in that spot, knowing that they will eventually get me there, or I have to wait like a guy like Noah Brown this week where it's just like it's so obvious that I can roll this guy out. Otherwise, I'm going to lose all the weeks that they could win me trying to chase the other outcomes, knowing that a guy like this can just completely bust out. Luke Musgrave, 2 for 64, along 36. Would like to know if this is air yards or not. And then there's Dontavian Wicks. Romeo Doubs gets another like red zone touchdown. There are a lot to like about the toys. It's just that Jordan Love and the coaching are just going to kill it. So Kenny Pickett, very pedestrian day, 126 yards passing, and it's just Jalen Warren and Najee Harris, and this is going to get really interesting going along. If the Steelers just turn it into this two-headed monster in the backfield between Warren and Harris, and again, these guys are creeping up. I don't think they'll ever get to high-end RB2 range because I just don't think they have the ceiling, especially if they're eating into each other. And then if Najee and Warren become very touchdown dependent, but as long as they can hover in there, because they're both getting a little bit of receiving work. Najee 3 for 14 and Jalen Warren 2 for 9, just a little bit of receiving work floor to go along with the rushing work is going to push them up there, so they're not as dependent on falling into the end zone. And Deontay Johnson didn't get it done. That's a little surprising. George Pickens, like if this turns into this like very low volume passing offense, very high running offense, like going out and trying to get a hold of a Jalen Warren or a Najee Harris, especially on teams like Najee Harris, probably not. Like someone maybe have spent on him, but Jalen Warren, a team might be trying to flip him to upgrade like a wide receiver. That'd be something I would look at. And I am gonna hopefully get out a value ranking, like not like I did before, but I want to talk about value, trying to have an idea of where these players rank at going into the last push to be able to get some trades done. So to attack a Jalen Warren, that like if you're really running back needy, to go out and attack a Jalen Warren, you might be able to get a hold of that guy because he might be on someone's bench to fix. So Titans Buccaneers, and this was kind of predictive. Like I thought it might devolve into a shootout, but it was just kind of a grind. And I don't, there wasn't a lot going on in the game. Baker May was just able to kind of keep him on track. Very inefficient for Rachaad White, but he got it done. 2 for 47 and a touchdown. Let's see. I thought like Trey Palmer might get home this game. He didn't. Mike Evans was a monster. 6 for 143 and a touchdown on 10 targets. On the other side of the coin for Tennessee, and I haven't seen the tape on this, like Will Levis wasn't really able to move the offense, but Derrick Henry wasn't very good. 11 for 24 on the ground. It was a Tajay Spears week. He did 5 for 18 on the ground, but he turned in 4 for 42 through the air. So again, like this very low end guy that you can roll out if you have to, especially in deeper leagues, Tajay Spears, especially if he's going to be used in that passing game. And it's just going to eventually happen. That week is going to be there, depending on how desperate you are. And then 8 targets for DeAndre Hopkins. Not necessarily the week that I thought it was going to go. Baker May's still going to be hovering down there. 18 and 29, 278, 2 touchdowns, an interception. Did fumble, didn't lose it. He's going to be hovering as a low end, tight end or quarterback 1, high end streamer for the rest of the year. It looks like, it's just kind of an ugly grind game that I could see from the ticker. I don't think there's anything particularly interesting that went on there. 49ers Jaguars, like the 49ers just beat them down. And I talked about this before. I don't think that Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback. I don't necessarily think he's a bad quarterback. I think he's just like okay. That low end tier of starter needs a lot of help around him. And the Jacksonville offense is probably not good. Um, they're not, or excuse me, they're not bad. And I tend to tier things in fantasy as like good, not bad, okay, not good, and then bad, kind of inverse. And I think Jacksonville's is going to be in that like okay to not, not bad area where they can have some good weeks, but they might be very dependent. And just the way that they're designed between like Travis Etienne and Trevor Lawrence is going to be really hard to decide like when they are going, who's going to get the work there. Um, and then so Christian Kirk did 11 targets, 6 for 104. I did see that he fumbled at a certain point in the game. And then Trevor Lawrence had 3 total turnovers. Ouch. I did see it on the ticker, like because I had some Calvin Ridley shares that there were a few times in the game where it looked like Jacksonville was going to claw their way back in, and then Trevor Lawrence turned the football over. I think like 1 or 2 of them were in the end zone. And then, like I said, Calvin Ridley, and then part of this is just coaching, and part of this is like he may not be the player anymore. But only 3 targets, and this was a week where I thought he would get home. But yeah, he's just going to be in that like boom bust wide receiver 3 range at this point. So like, I would probably be not interested in him at all, even though he does have a favorable schedule coming up. We'll talk more about that probably in the after waivers. And then ETN, that's a tough week, especially if they're not going to integrate him into the passing game, like 2 for 9 on 4 targets. If he's not going to be integrated enough into the passing game to survive a bad week like this, like that's really going to hurt him. And again, like guys tend to have bad weeks every once in a while. Like when I do my preseason evaluations, I tend to treat a bad week like an injury because guys tend to have them every once in a while. The very elite guys that can stay healthy and put it up, like even like Christian McCaffrey this week, where he doesn't fall into the end zone, but does have 95 yards rushing to go with 6 for 47 on 10 targets. Yeah, so Brock Purdy, this was a little interesting. I was watching this that like they brought Sam Darnold in the game late, and Christian McCaffrey was still in it. And this was like they were driving to go up 41-3, and they were still throwing and had McCaffrey in with like 3 minutes left to go in the game. And they went for it on 4th and they missed it. And I was like, I don't know what you're doing. Like you're bringing in your backup, and then you have your like slightly injury prone all world running back that you're still just grinding when the game's out of reach. That was a little weird. So Brock Purdy with all his toys coming off the bye week, 296, 3 touchdowns. Like I said, a guy that has this many weapons that can just be serviceable from a fantasy perspective is just going to be a guy that I can plug in, and I'm not going to get cute with it very often. Let's see. George Kittle, the high efficiency, 4 targets, 3 receptions, 116 yards, and 1 touchdown. Ayuk gets home with a touchdown, but low efficiency, 3 for 55. And then Debo. So it's just like they're going to cannibalize each other. This was a Kittle 1, Ayuk 2, Debo 3 week. And I don't even think Debo got it. Oh, yeah, Debo got it done. 3 for 29 and a touchdown on the ground. So like that's kind of what you're looking at. So I guess everybody got home this week from the Niners perspective, which I think is a little bit of a rarity. And this game, like I said, I could see it turning into a shootout, and I could kind of see it turning into a slog. I did not see the 49ers just beating down the Jacksonville Jaguars the way that they did. All right, Browns Ravens. This one was crazy because when I got up and I checked this out, so Baltimore went up like 17-0 or 17-3, and then Baltimore and one of those was a pick 6 by Deshaun Watson, and then the Browns clawed their way back in and made it like 9-17 at halftime, and then the Ravens jumped out ahead 31 or 24-3 or 24-9, whatever. You don't care about that. And then the Browns kept clawing, and they won on a last second field goal. I mean, it was crazy. And at one point I was watching the ticker that the Browns scored what would have been the tying touchdown, but then the Browns kicker missed the extra point. Like that is just crazy. This game was so Jerome Ford does 1,707. And again, the problem with this is Kareem Hunt is the has some of the more valuable touches. So Jerome Ford would be a sell because he's going to get just all the gravy, and he wasn't even necessarily being used in the passing game. Only one target this week. So what made Jerome Ford more of a valuable player was the rushing floor that he would have. He's not going to get the red zone work. That's going to be Kareem Hunt, but he was going to get the rushing floor or the receiving floor, and then he didn't even do it this week. Um, but you see that I don't even think Kareem Hunt was involved in the passing game. This was just a really crazy script. David Njoku, 6 for 58. He's kind of turning into that passing down guy, or the receiving running back. And then Amari Cooper's the downfield guy, and then they have Elijah Moore doing like some of the dirty work. So like it's just from a value standpoint, from a fantasy perspective, the guys they're all imperfect, and they're almost all too imperfect to ever be used correctly outside probably like Amari Cooper, the 6 for 98 on 9 targets is just going to be like that set and forget like wide receiver 2. I don't know outside of that, like unless you're really hurting at running back like Jerome Ford, to me, like he's gonna have like these lower efficiency weeks, and that this was coming off that huge volume that he had last week. And this might be some of the things where it's just like don't overthink it. It's just a game scripted to you because of how the Ravens jumped out ahead, and it's just gonna work like that. And then Cedric Tillman, the guy that's the rookie, 3 targets, didn't get any production out of that. And then from a Baltimore perspective, I haven't seen Lamar Jackson's stat line on this one. I imagine it's not going to be like too good compared to what you paid for him. 13 23, 223, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Again, this against the Browns defense, but you're paying for a guy, and from a fantasy perspective, to give you elite weeks, and he's still not doing that. And then he does another 8 for 41. The interesting thing is like Keaton Mitchell had a 34-yard touchdown, or 39-yard touchdown on his first carry. So again, like sometimes it doesn't matter how the sausage is made. If you paid for Keaton Mitchell, he got home. He just was not efficient after that. He only had 4 total opportunities, 5 total opportunities, 2 targets, got another one for 32. So there would be some interest there. I just don't know how predictive all this is going to be. Gus Bus, 11 for 24 and a touchdown. Zay Flowers, more volume coming off of what he did, 5 for 73 on 6 targets. I know Odell Beckham did a 40-yard touchdown. I mean, just like trying to predict this from a fantasy standpoint, this is just dart throws. All right, Falcons Cardinals. Kyler Murray's back. This was a little weird. From the Falcons perspective, Taylor Heineke went out with a hamstring, and Desmond Ridder came back in, and it looked early on like the Cardinal, or later on that the Cardinals were going to kind of take the game. And then the Falcons just hung around, and then it was a late field goal for the Cardinals. But from a fantasy perspective, like I don't know. I don't know how viable either of the quarterbacks for the Falcons were. Desmond Ridder, when he was getting a little bit more passing volume and he had that rushing floor, was viable. I don't know if they're going to get back to that. This is just going to be like, as a whole, offense is going to be very unpredictable. Bijan did 22 carries, 95 yards, got a rushing touchdown. I don't know if that was in the red zone yet. And then Algier, another 9 carries, 31. That wasn't too efficient. Drake London, 3 for 36. Kyle Pitts, 3 for 30. So again, like this is just not a priority. They're passing it. Arthur Smith is just a horrible coach. Bijan only 2 targets, 1 for 11. Jonnu Smith, hopefully he didn't roll him out. 2 targets, 1 for 1. And then from an Arizona perspective, like Kyler Murray, I did see that they brought in Clayton Tune to do the quarterback sneak to score a touchdown. So that kind of hurts Kyler Murray, but he was back being nimbly bimbly, 6 for 33 and a touchdown. And I did see that like later in the game, he did run around and extend a play so the Cardinals could win. So he is going to be relatively healthy. James Conner back, 16 for 73 to go along with, I don't think he got any receiving work. And then Keontae Ingram, the backup in this game, 2 for 2. Tony Jones, 1 for 13. So there isn't a cuff right now. Be interesting when like Mercado comes back to see where he falls into this pecking order. So the big news: Trey McBride, 9 targets, 8 for 131. So that's the guy. And then outside of that, like Michael Wilson had 6 targets. So he right now is going to be operating maybe as the number 2 in the offense with those higher higher production, lower efficiency type plays. So like that's going to be something to be paying attention to, not just from a dynasty perspective, from like a weekly standpoint. Like I imagine there are going to be better matchups and Kyler Murphy's going to get better. And then Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, 4 targets, 1 for 28. I want to see the air yards on that. But the other news is I'm fairly certain that AJ Terrell was just like following him around. So again, like sometimes we have to be cute and sit a guy that we think we should be rolling because the tea leaves say this is not a week to be rolling the guy out. I rolled out my Hollywood Brown shares. I went out and I traded for him and he kind of bit me. But like sometimes like you trust it and sometimes like when you trust it, it burns you. Lions Chargers, absolute shootout in this game. I was thinking that maybe the Lions would beat the Chargers down, but it was a shootout. The interesting thing, Jared Goff, 23 to 33, 2 touchdowns. So David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, like this might be a very interesting backfield. So Jahmyr Gibbs got 2 touchdowns from the 1 yard line. What I would have thought like David Montgomery got. So Montgomery actually had less carries than Jahmyr Gibbs did, but he was more efficient on them, 12 for 116 and 1 touchdown. And then Jahmyr Gibbs, 14 for 77 and 2 touchdowns. And one of the touchdowns for David Montgomery was a 75-yarder. And then from the passing perspective, Jahmyr Gibbs like was still heavily involved. 5 targets, 3 for 35. And then that would hurt David Montgomery, like I was talking about earlier in the year. If David Montgomery doesn't have the receiving floor, he very easily could have had that like 40-degree day or sub 40-degree day if he doesn't get the touchdown. And if Jahmyr Gibbs is the guy, the beneficiary, because he's going to get like the goal line work and the receiving work, like that pushes him up into that RB1 type category. But right now they're both roles, which is like interesting and good from a fantasy perspective. Amon-Ra St. Brown, like ridiculous 9 targets, 8 receptions, 156 yards and a touchdown. And we're going to talk about some ridiculousness. And then Laporta still low end area. I was expecting Donovan Peoples-Jones. I don't even know if he was active to cut into Jameson Williams, but Jameson Williams is still hanging around. But yeah, like this is kind of how we thought the offense was going to shake out a little bit earlier in the year, and it's coming through. So again, sub-elite quarterbacks, and I wouldn't put Justin Herbert in the sub-elite area. I would put him in as like just a solid quarterback 1, but he gets 4 touchdown passes a day, 323, high volume, high volume quarterback, high volume passing quarterback. It has to get home with the passing touchdowns and the yardage, and he does this week. So I don't care. Austin Eckler gets a rushing touchdown to go along with 4 for 48 on 7 targets. And then the rushing yards are the gravy to this. Still looks like Josh Kelly is the cuff. And then speaking of ridiculous weeks, so Keenan Allen, 14 targets, 11 receptions, 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, wow. And then Quentin Johnston does get home on a touchdown. I think it was designed later in the game. But yeah, like the interesting week, good for fantasy toys, obviously. And that was a barn burner. I think that was a last second field goal again by the Lions to finish that game off. Giants and Cowboys, exactly what we kind of thought it was going to be in this game. When I looked at this, like I think at halftime it was 28-7. No, 28-0. So I must have looked at it in the early third. So it was 28-0 at halftime, and then that was about the end of it. But then the Cowboys continued to put up 21 points in the second half. So Tommy DeVito did throw 2 touchdowns on only 86 yards passing. Ouch. Volume, Saquon 13 for 66. And then only 3 targets, 1 for -5. I don't even know how Tommy DeVito got any opportunity to throw touchdowns. One to Lawrence Kager, who I don't have any idea who it is. Another one to Sterling Shepard. So I don't even know what was going on. Daniel Bellinger did lead the team in receiving, 2 for 34. So I kind of thought that was going to happen. And then Jalen Hyatt, only 1 target, which I was a little surprising this week, but I think next week Jalen Hyatt's going to be a role. So then from the Cowboys perspective, and again, if these games are this crazy of a game script from a real football perspective, it's going to be very hard to predict anything that's going to go on. I don't know why the Cowboys had to have Dak Prescott score 4 touchdowns. He threw a pick, and then he also had another one on the ground. Like, I just don't know why they had to do anything in the second half except bleed clock at this point. But they put the pedal to the floor. The 404 yards passing for him, and it looks like they had 168 yards rushing to go along with that. And then Cooper Rush had another 68 yards passing on top of that, the backup quarterback for the Cowboys. And again, I don't understand this coaching. Cooper Rush comes in, he's throwing the football 9 times, throws a pick. That's probably why Tommy DeVito threw 2 touchdown passes. One of the guys to pick up this week, and I was already talking about him, Rico Dowdle, and this may be a game script thing, but it doesn't really matter from a fantasy perspective. 12 for 79 and a touchdown to go along with Tony Pollard's 15 for 55, no touchdowns. And again, like Pollard may be a huge bust, but I could definitely see this turning into some type of a timeshare going forward. And Zeke last year definitely was in that RB2 range, snaking some of the goal line work, and that might help Tony Pollard. So, like, I could definitely see everybody's going to be saying go out and get Rico Dowdle as a priority guy in waivers, and I would tend to agree with that. Then Brandon Cooks, 10 targets, 9 for 173 and touchdown. Like, I have no idea what went on in this game. CD Lamb, 14 targets, 11 for 151 and a touchdown. Gallup gets home with a touchdown, 2 for 70. I mean, it looks like they were just taking advantage from a stat standpoint. And then Jake Ferguson, 7 targets, touchdown, 4 for 26. So, yeah. And then I have no idea. I guess I could pull this up. Defensively, the Cowboys were only okay at 8 points. So wow. I have no idea. I was expecting them to hang like 20. And then Commanders, Seahawks. This one went down to the final play of the game. Seahawks kicked a field goal, kind of a back and forth. Sam Howell, again, like I said, like, just don't think about it too much. He's your quarterback one, 312 and 3 touchdowns. B-Rob, 8 for 38 to go with 4 for 13 from Antonio Gibson. But then Brian Robinson, I have no ideas on this, 6 for 6 for 119 and a touchdown. That's crazy. And then Antonio Gibson, another 5 for 42, a touchdown. Like, if this is the backfield that's going to turn out, like, I guess you're rolling both your Redskins pieces, and then everybody else from a Redskins perspective didn't get it done that were fantasy relevant. And then on the other side, for the Seahawks, Geno Smith, again, the matchup says, like, no pass rush, no secondary. Geno Smith is going to get it done. 369, 2 touchdowns. Kenneth Walker, not efficient. Zach Charbonnet, efficient. So Kenneth Walker, 19 for 63. Charbonnet, 6 for 44. So, like, yeah, that's the guy. DK Metcalf, 7 for 98. Tyler Lockett, 8 for 92 and a touchdown. Kenneth Walker, again, because he's good at football, or he's a good athlete. I shouldn't say he's good at football. 1 for 64 on 2 targets and a touchdown. Jackson Smith and Jigma, 4 for 53 to go with all that. There's Bobo. So, yeah. So again, like, from a fantasy perspective, and I talked about this before, this just struck me. If I had paid for, like, Justin Herbert in, like, 3rd, 4th round of the draft, the other guys I could have rolled out this week, like Dak Prescott was probably going like fringe, like in a 12-man league, he was probably being drafted as a quarterback one. Justin Herbert was a guy that was getting pushed up into like the 3rd round, somewhere between like the 6th, probably in like certain leagues, to like a 3rd round draft pick. The top 5 of the 6 top quarterbacks, Dobbs, Prescott, Howell, Geno Smith, and Brock Purdy. Like, again, trying to predict the week and where the value lies. Like, elite quarterbacks have a lot of value, but there are particular guys that have the nimbly bimbly, because the high passing volume with the touchdowns that go with it are a lot more difficult to predict. And again, there's Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow going somewhere like, I think, like quarterback 4 to quarterback 6, somewhere probably within those premium rounds of the draft. And it's a whole lot harder to go like, he's going to be able to get these high volume passing days with those multiple touchdowns to go compete. And again, outside of Burrow, and I know like there were guys on buys this week, but outside of Burrow and Herbert, like the top 11, 12, like Deshaun Jackson or Deshaun Watson, like a lot of the quarterbacks this week that put up all these numbers, like they had rather predictive weeks on top of the fact that there wasn't a lot of capital put out. And then finally, the Zach Wilson apology channel. So I was watching the ticker on this before I sat down to do the sausage video. Again, Zach Wilson did not lose the week for the Jets. 23, 39, 263, had a pick. I don't know if it was on him or not, but again, kind of outdueled Aiden O'Connell, 16 for 27, 153, one touchdown, one interception for O'Connell, the rookie. And there was a last second Hail Mary that almost came down with the Jets. So yeah, like that's just how the game went. Zach Wilson was driving for the what would have been the go-ahead touchdown with about like 2 minutes left to go in the game, or a minute, through a pick. I don't know, if it was on him or anybody else, but again, from a fantasy perspective, I don't care, because Zach Wilson was like serviceable enough to give you 14, serviceable enough to be able to be rolled out against Lamar Jackson, according to the stats. That's just kind of what we need to know. And then Breece Hall being run into the back of the offensive line, 13 for 28. Garrett Wilson, again, he would be a wide receiver one if he could score touchdowns, 14 targets, 9 for 93. But he's not, so that's going to lower him. I think he's in that safe play wide receiver 2 range, but he's going to have a very capped ceiling because of the offense. And with the amount of opportunities he's going to have a relatively high floor. Conklin, I already talked about him. I think you could roll him out in deeper leagues or stream him. Breece Hall does 3 for 47 on the ground, so I think he does get home. But again, how bad the offense is going to narrow him down into that like wider or running back 2 range. I don't think there's anybody else viable. And then Devontae Adams, like 6 for 86 on 13 targets. And that's kind of how I would envision the offense working. They are going to force feed the football to Devontae Adams. They may not be good targets, but they will be targets. And I'm kind of just looking at the highlight to see if Alan Lazard drops this ball. No, it looks like he caught it. So anyway, I think that's about all I have for today. I did talk about the Panthers-Bears game. It was just ugly. I don't think outside of a few guys going forward, especially when Justin Fields coming back, there's going to be anybody really fantasy relevant. And then the Broncos-Bills tomorrow night. Hopefully, if you need your points in that game, you'll get your points. And I'll see you guys tomorrow when I go over Chasing the Dragon on the waiver wire pickups, because I think there's a lot of guys to be picked up this week on waiver wires.